Here we go. Okay. Okay. So basically, what I did was I used Google Earth Engine because of its vast repository of satellite images, radar images, spectral images. And if you notice this image, it's quite spectacular. It's like one of the vast lakes on that
Chintan,
are on the.
Chintan, just a second. Your slides aren't showing up. Have you shared the screen?
Oops. Thanks. Application window. Oh yeah. That good?
Yep, great. Thanks.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. And oh yeah. So if you look at this first slide, we have this is a vast lake on the Yarlung Sangpo, and if you notice, it's like there are actually sand dunes all along this area in the center, and over here, as where I'm showing my pointer, and this entire region got flooded around 22nd August. But the story doesn't stop there. I mean, in fact, there were a series of earthquakes in 2017, which created landslides. And then subsequently, there were floods in June 2018. And with the vast network of, at least the network of vigilant citizens, journalists, and government officials in Arunachal, Arunachal Pradesh, which borders China and Tibet in the north, and which also where the Yarlung Sangpo becomes the Siang, and it's quite an important river there, and people are generally quite vigilant because they rely on fish stocks there, general water there, and the story actually starts in when there were first earthquakes there, and everybody was concerned about what's happening, and the waters were muddy, and in June. In June, there was a flood. And if you do take a look at these links, there are a couple of articles here, as well as some of my tweets, where you can see how the story progressed. So what I tried to do was I tried to get information from journalists to see what they want, and then connect past events where there were earthquakes. And basically, people were worried that, okay, there's going to be an unnatural flood, or what is happening. But then they also managed to get information from the officials in China that shared, saying that there is a flood happening on the Yarlung Sangpo, and we should be prepared. Now, the government, the government officials and the journalists in Arunachal were not sure exactly what was happening. So it started with a phone call, and they phoned me. So, do you have any access to satellite imagery? Can you help us out? Because we just don't know what's going to happen. And it so happened that on this was sometime between 28th August and 1st September 2018. And oops, is my okay, great. Can you all see my speaker notes, Pradeep?
No, okay. I don't.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay. So, and what happened was, along with Tanirban Datta Roy, we reported on like a series of earthquakes, and then the government was really supportive that, okay, fine, we need to let's see how we can use y'all to help us out in the future. And what happened was, between June and July, the landslide dams had failed that were on the Sangpo, and an outburst flood did ensue, but at a much smaller scale than what had happened in the year 2000. However, there was serious damage in the floodplain. So everybody was concerned that are we going to expect more floods, given the information from the Chinese officials. However, on 29th August, there was a cautionary issue letter issued by the Deputy Commissioner of the Siang districts. And he had warned the citizens not to refrain from venturing into the Siang. The letter also stated that the Central Water Commission had received data from China indicating a discharge of about 9,000 cubic meters per second from one of the 3 stations. So the 3 stations, I mean 3 of the hydrological stations on the Yarlung Sangpo, from which the Chinese, they share hydrological data with us. This particular discharge of 9,000 cubic meters per second was also the highest in 50 years. So this is the information I had received, and and I was quite unsure about what to do with this information and how do we go about it. So the first place I did look was Google Earth Engine, and then I looked for images, but unfortunately there was plenty of cloud cover across the area. So I was wondering, okay, is if there were to be a flood, then clearly it has to be from either extreme a lot of melt from ice, or it's going to be a really a very precipitous, a lot of rainfall, or perhaps a cloud burst, as many had said. So I went to the NOAA website. NOAA is the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration in the USA, and they often put up consolidated, I mean, composite maps of precipitation, as well as they calculate the anomalies. So in this particular map, what you see is that you have the anomaly. That means so zero would be basically normal rainfall from 1981 to now, but then anything above it or below it would be basically an excess from the mean, a deviation from the mean. So this is, if you notice the point, this is how the Yarlung Tsangpo flows from here, and then it comes into Arunachal here. And if you notice this vast green area, it's quite clear that certain parts had at least above 150 millimeters of anomalously high rainfall. And here's a closer look at the image, except that the data is still not fine resolution. So what we have is we have low rainfall in Arunachal Pradesh. So clearly that told us that the flood is probably not going to happen. Is not the focal point of it is not anywhere close by. But then when I looked at this map, oh, there was clearly a lot of rainfall all the way from June to August, from the headwaters of the Yarlung Tsangpo all the way. So that sort of motivated me to look at, okay, so if there's so many clouds, I can certainly use radar images, because so what happens in radar, and perhaps you should also read up on radar and backscattering, is that so if you take a really rough surface, the scatter from radar would be very, would be in a much larger plane. But however, in a flat surface, or say if you even take a mirror, or if you take ice, the scatter from it is quite specific in its angle. It's a little complicated, but sure, you all can perhaps read it at some point in time. And certainly, so I picked out the two areas, two of the hydrological stations from where data are shared with us. And if you notice, so this is an August 2017 image, these two. And this looks like, okay, so in August 2017, what was the rainfall like? How did it look? How is the flood? Looks, okay, perhaps it is normal, we're not sure. Okay, so in July 18, it's okay. And it seems like to be, the waters are much lower than August 17. July 10th to 17th, again, it's okay. So there seems to be some increase in water levels here, as well as you notice certain islands disappearing off here, especially this one and this one. And then what was absolutely stunning was what was going on in between August 20th and 30th in 2018. And that corresponded to the date of when they recorded the 50-year high record of 9,000 cubic meters per second from this station, Nuxia. And if you notice, there's water quite far out there. And again, those islands have disappeared from July to, so clearly the water is rising from July to August. To facilitate that, I mean, I was wondering, okay, so what do we do? Can we check this out across the vast scale? People had shared a lot of rumors that the Chinese had opened up a dam, and they were like planning to like just not care about what is going on. That there were valid concerns, because in 2000, when the flood did occur, the Chinese couldn't inform us for some particular reason, and we were left with 7 washed out bridges. So to prevent such an eventuality, and to prevent any kind of, so we thought we should get as much of information out there into the public. And it was amazing that Google Earth Engine already have had this platform where you can create these apps. And so if you check out the first link, and I'll switch the screen there, and perhaps you all can go to the particular link instead of using my screen. if you notice, so we have, so I've chosen two images to compare, and one's from 2018 June, 3rd June, and I've compared it with a July image, and this is at Nuxia. And if you just notice what's going on here is that you do see an increase in water levels, that's for sure. But what's also quite, and so basically what we wanted to do is we wanted to get a composite. I wanted to get a composite of every single radar image that was available in that particular time frame. So to run this app, I actually went to Google Earth Engine's app repository. I mean, they have like this website where all the apps are, and over there was an open source script where a weekly composite of all Sentinel-1 which images were sort of were added as layers, and that's basically what I did. And I just added more layers and sort of gave it a specified a specific gave it a region for it. And so if you move out and then if you sort of go towards go further east towards the headwaters of the Siang, if you change the dates, you do see actually a tremendous increase in water, and it's quite shocking, in fact, that such high levels of water could be were like there was such high levels of water in this region. What also was quite what I also did find and notice was that as I kept on going east towards the headwaters and towards the origin of the Yarlung Sangpo, which is basically very close to Mount Kailash, you notice that I noticed that even though the rainfall was different and was low in a couple of the stations, there was still a flood indicator on the river, which meant that there was water coming from areas much farther up than from than exactly from the station area. And so if you look at the the July 22nd image, and you compare it with the September image, yeah. So what you do see is that well, I'll have to, oops. Oh yeah, okay, it's not loading. Sorry about that. But yeah, so what you do see is that if you look at the headwaters as well as the upstream, you do see immense amount of precipitation as well as water flowing into the river from a much vaster region than just from the stations. So clearly, the problem may not have been the release of dam waters at a specific river, and it was a much larger problem than than we actually could fathom. And there was so much of precipitation that there was actually quite a bit of ice loss from some of these places. In fact, certain places did see actually accumulation of snow. So it was not exactly a simple thing for people to understand. So and we had to create this kind of app that could perhaps make people view that the scale of the problem was much vaster than what is I think under human control. If you'll even perhaps go to Arunachal Pradesh, and if you go to Pasighat, you will actually notice changes in the river. So if you look at, you can play around with this image as much as you with this app as much as you want. Let me know if you want the source code. It's quite simple. But if you notice that certain islands actually in Arunachal Pradesh actually were submerged post the flood, and it was quite shocking and quite dangerous. But then at least we knew that there was a way to figure out what was the source and what was the problem, to at least not elevate tensions between two different countries, and perhaps even tell people that see, here we have climate change is an issue and we need to think about it and how it's going to affect us. If you want to read more, you can certainly go to the link where Anirban Dattaroy and I wrote an article in the Arunachal Times, and where we write in more detail about rainfall anomalies and flooding. And yes, and do check out the app as much as you want. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that's about it, guys. Let me know if you have any questions.
Great.